Thank you very much. We'll make a start. This is the audiobook panel. I've forgotten to read the description out of the programme. But it's a panel in which our panelists will hopefully be talking about their audiobook experiences as narrators and creators. And I very much would like to get questions from the audience, because I expect some people might be here with some very specific questions, and I think it's a practical session, so hopefully we can get something from individuals. My name is Ian Grant. I do not create audiobooks. I'm a writer. I commission audiobooks. I pay narrators to make audiobooks. I listen to them. I like them, and I listen to things that audiobook narrators have to say about them, but I'm very much on the receiving end of audiobooks. So I wonder if I can invite the panelists, we'll go from, hang on, right, yes, to left, to introduce themselves and tell us about their work within audiobooks and perhaps how they got into it.
Right, starting with me, right. I am Rose Drew with Stairwell Books, and we've had exactly one audiobook. It was a bit tricky, so we can tell you all the things not to do and all the other things like that, but okay, I'm a little shameless, so when I'm in a book room, if someone goes by with a dog or a white stick, I'm like, would you like to hear a really good book? And I sell it every time. They're like, really? I said, it's not the Da Vinci Code, come. And they come over here and we talk about it a little bit, and I sell a copy every single time when someone listens to books as opposed to reads them, and with their eyes or their fingers. And so it's actually really nice that way. And we've got it on, I think it's on Kindle also. So that's our one experience, but we've done that one, and I'm also someone who listens to them as well.
Hi, I'm Rosa B. Watkinson. I am a narrator. I've narrated quite a few books. I also do voice work for various things like Skywind and other games. And I create audio programs for people who are hard of sight for various things like football matches and that, oddly enough. I'm also a writer, Barbie Watkinson, and I'm finishing off my third of my trilogy, but I've not narrated my own books because before I came into narrating, the publisher had already sold the rights to someone else. I came into narrating rather by accident. I had a big event in my life that changed my life entirely. And by chance, a friend of mine in America had lost his narrator and was searching for another. And he said he wanted a man, probably American, gravelly voice. And I said, look, I'm not male. And I don't have a gravelly voice, but, you know, can I have a go? I've done acting for many years as well. So I thought, why not? And he said, yeah, go for it. And so he sent me the characters, I sent him the audio on my laptop with no proper mic or anything. And I'm getting really nervous now. And he liked it enough to put it in a group of others he liked, sent them out to friends. Then I got picked, the complete opposite of what he was actually looking for, and that was Ghosts of Tomorrow by Michael R. Fletcher. I don't know if you know, so near future dystopian. Except for nodding away, that's good. Which was a huge tome with many characters, some sentences in other languages, Japanese, Portuguese, which I studied to learn how to say them properly. And I don't know how I finished it, but somehow I did. And it was an amazing experience. And so a new career was born. Later.
I'm Michael R. Miller. Like Ian, I'm a writer, so I don't narrate, which is just as well, because it would be really bad. But I work closely with the narrators. I fund the productions. I'm there while it's being recorded. I'm sort of involved in the process. And in my self-publishing career, I make the most of my income and most of my sales now, in terms of just the units as well, come from audiobooks. So it's very much my bread and butter. So I've got a lot of experience on that kind of thing in terms of like writing with an ear for it, because I do listen to a lot, going through the process of production, publishing it, and selling it.
Hi, I'm Pauline Kirk. I narrated the book that Rose has mentioned, Order 7, which was published by Stairwell Books and then done as an audiobook. I did it myself, so it's a case of an author narrating. I did have a background in amateur theatre, and readings, public readings, so I did know to some extent what I was doing. I learned an enormous lot while I was narrating it. It's this big book, and I worked with a studio in Leeds, and I'll tell you some about the things that they learnt and I learnt, because I think we were both feeling our way a bit, and if I did it again, I would know an awful lot more, and I would be able to streamline the process apart from anything else. But I enjoyed it, and it was a kind of creative experience. So as yet, I don't think it's recouped its outlay, but that isn't actually what it was about. It was the joy, actually, of reading the novel, learning how to do it, and hearing other people listening to it. I have a friend who's listened to it lots of times, and it's rather strange when she gardens with me to help garden, and I hear my own voice coming out of her earpiece, and that is very strange.
Thank you. Actually, I'm going to pick up on a couple of things there, and this is fair warning to the audience now, because this may well be my last question. So if anyone's got thoughts about questions they want to ask, please be ready with them. You were talking about books recouping their cost, and obviously, Mark, you were talking about the amount of money that is this revenue stream for books. Now, I know for myself, I co-write books with Heidi Goody. She sat there, and certainly for a good chunk of the last 2 so years, audiobooks will have represented 50% of our entire income. Without them, we'd have been earning half the amount. Yeah, obviously, audiobooks also, if you're paying per finished hour, they are a significant outlay. They can be expensive things to produce, although we can go down royalty share models. We haven't, but those things happen. And I think that aspect of things, that people's relationship with audiobooks have changed significantly over the last, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years. So we'll come directly back up the other way. Can you suggest me what, from your experiences, how important are audiobooks and the business of audiobooks right now?
Growing vastly. COVID, I think, did a lot of this. People were stuck at home, couldn't go to the library, didn't particularly want to order books online, but did order audiobooks, and I think that has made a big difference. When I did it just before COVID, it was still an option. It wasn't, as it were, necessary. And yet now many books are published straight away in audiobook, and with some print copies, the balance has completely shifted. So print on demand for the print copy, but automatic audio, that I think says it all, that the balance has turned. And I think it would now be an awful lot easier and less expensive to do, because I had to book my own studio, work with a studio in Leeds. It was great. It was one of these places where you knock on the door 3 times and wait for somebody to open, and a red door at that. Because of the cost of the equipment, it had to be, in Leeds anyway, it had to be totally inconspicuous. So it was in an old warehouse. So it was emerging and has gone tremendously quickly since. And that, I think, is something we all have to sort of swallow hard and jump.
Yeah. Can you get a reminder that your question is why it's growing?
Or what your personal assessment is of the state of audiobooks now in relation to you,
Well, it's the bulk of my income. As to why that's happened, there's numerous reasons. But I do think that COVID has saw a big jump in audio sales, so there's probably something to do with that. But the growth with like podcasts in generally people are consuming audio more and more and more. Obviously, if you get better headphones, the noise cancel, and everyone has them, that's ubiquitous, that's going to help. So there's some things external to fiction that has obviously helped with that. Everyone's got a smartphone with noise cancelling earphones that they listen to podcasts, and they'll try audiobooks sometimes, I guess. And once they start, some people find they really like it, some people find they like it even better. and then they just become audio listeners. You know, the market can fragment it, but there's some people that overlap and buy any format now and again, but mostly people will read either print or ebook or now just pure audio. So if you don't have audio, there will be many people who just won't pick up your book because they're waiting for the audio, and if it never comes, they won't get to it. And I think partly with with everything being more ubiquitous, the headphones, etc., there's a lot of workspace environments where people are allowed to listen to music. Some people just listen to audiobooks. You've got, a big segment of my market in the US is truck drivers, because they have long drives.
Sorry, how do you know it's truck drivers?
Well, it's not like, I don't have an exact breakdown, but there's a lot of people that reach out to me, message me, and they mention that they're truckers. So it's not, I don't know, hard data, but you pick it up. It's a good sense. There's a big sense that when a new book comes out, and I write epic fantasy, so it's pretty long. The last book was 26 hours long. They're delighted because that's going to keep them going for a little while. There's truck drivers, there's people who work night shifts, or in warehouse, or anywhere where they can just put in quietly and be left alone for hours doing whatever. They'll listen to podcasts and audiobooks. So I think there's some things like that have really helped to expand that out, and people are trying it for the first time. And again, this is a US thing where people have longer car rides, and so in general, people will listen to an audiobook as well, and it's just easier because your phone will sync to your car now. It's just made it easier. I think 20 years ago, I always listened to audiobooks growing up. I had the Harry Potter on tape, on cassettes, with the Walkmans. As a kid, that's always how I was consuming a lot of books. But that's clunky, isn't it? And it's not. You can't share that over the speaker. And so I think the technology and a little bit of cultural stuff has helped push audio out to more people and made it more easier and just more accepted. And so I think it's still growing. I'm not sure it's growing as quick as it was, but I think we haven't seen the full peak yet.
In my case, the result is that people are trying to relaunch books that have been published a while through audio. At the moment, I'm working on a trilogy for someone who the books came out quite a few years ago, and he's thinking of how well they're doing audio will help him maybe to continue that series in written form and then more audio. And in another case, the book has yet to be printed, and I've already got a contract to make the audio. So there's a lot more interest in audio from publishers and authors to get that book out, as was mentioned, as quickly as possible, because audio is huge and growing still, and it's a joy to do.
My experience with audiobooks, one time my husband and I had a very long car drive, and so we got a Bernard Cornwell book about Viking something, Uthold, I think, and we listened to it, and it was on DVD, so you're right about the ancient technology, that sort of thing. And so we got into that because it was a long drive, and I am originally from America, and you just drive lengthy periods of time. But when I got Margaret Atwood's The Flood, I would be doing things. I'd turn and go, hey, who died? And I get lost. I'm doing my task, and I go, what happened now? And so for a while, I kind of got away from them. But as I've gotten into doing longer train journeys and other things, and working in a lab and all the rest of it, it is easier to focus on the task at hand if it's rote. But if you're doing something that, trying to organize things, I find it a bit tricky. I've done a bunch of literature festivals, playing the part of the editor, and on one of them, a woman was a voice actor and a rather well-known one in America, and we were talking about the ins and outs of it, and it is anywhere from 50 to 250 in American dollars an hour. So if it's a 26-hour book, multiply that by 50 to 250. It is an outlay, and it does take a certain amount of time. You have to have intro and outro music, and you have to set it up for someone who does not see or is driving, and it's how many pages and something like that. You have to be kind and let them know the information, the ISBN number, that sort of thing. And so there's things that we had to learn about that sort of thing. And so, yeah, that was definitely a learning experience, and I've lost my train of thought entirely, sadly. But I think that as people do get to throw the sound to the car speaker, and that was quite a change for me. You do get to have more access to the I still want to call it books on tape, and the audiobooks. And And I think that it might grow, but it really has to, for me anyway, it has to be for specific tasks, I think. Because it has to be something that I can, takes a lot of extra brain space for me, because I get distracted. But I do like them in that way.
I think it's interesting actually that we do have a cultural shift about when it's acceptable to listen to things now. I think things are changing, and we do consume things in different ways. Interesting, I think, in terms of what Pauline was saying, because I think when I think about our sales, probably e-book sales, audiobook sales, and there's print somewhere down by the floor. You know, it's shifted quite dramatically.
Yeah, definitely.
So really important. I did say I want to throw this up to the audience, because some people might have some very specific questions, either about creating audiobooks or getting their books put on audio. Has anyone got a question? Yes, please.
Yeah, I'm sort of in the fortunate position in some ways. I'm with 3 publishers. Most of my work are with 2 particular publishers. Neither of them, or any of them, are interested in audiobooks.
I would love to do more, absolutely.
And as a writer, I find it quite frustrating. As a reader, whose eyesight is so bad now, I can't even read my own books, and I have to have it really blown up. And audiobooks have been an absolute godsend. Especially when you get things like Fairy Tale by Stephen King for nothing for a while. You know, I mean, there's no way I could afford one of those great chunky books, and I couldn't even read it if I did. So what do you do as a frustrated writer, many years, 20 years or something, wants to get into audiobooks, can't afford them themselves, and your publishers aren't interested? So what do we do?
So obviously you've got, just to recap in a general sense, so then the panelists can come in. Obviously, your specific scenario is that you've got books that have been in print, you'd love there to be audio, it's not happening. Where to go from here?
Exactly.
Okay, has any panelists got anything they'd like to leave in with?
You own the rights for the audio, do you? Or does the publisher?
Publisher. I have some books that come back to me.
You could ask
because
them
the publishers
back.
have gone. I've got some books that come back to me because the publishers have folded.
Well, if they're
And they're
not,
my rights.
if they're not willing to go the audio,
Exactly.
ask for the rights back.
Yes.
Okay.
And then there is a portal, the ACX portal, which is where many people go to find narrators for their books, ask who you like for editions, and then there are various scenarios. If you can't afford it yourself, you can do a royalty share, so you get 50-50
Yeah.
from Audible once it's out, or you can do royalty share plus, so you give a sum of money initially to the narrator, and then it's a 50-50.
Right.
And it's obviously a small sum, not as much. And of course the full, which is you're avoiding, is to actually pay per finished hour, PFH, which varies tremendously from narrator to narrator, from say £50 an hour, which is very low,
Yes.
to around £200 to £400 an hour.
The 50s if you read it yourself too. I mean, that's,
Yeah.
yeah.
But also,
Perhaps I could do it because
Yeah.
I act as well.
you factor in though that these are producers and narrators, so they'll be doing all the editing as well. Per finished hour
All
is
right.
ready to be sent out on Audible for people to listen to.
That's exactly.
Yes, and that my experience, I would second that that's actually very important. I did it with a collaboration with a studio, and it took a lot of editing afterwards to remove the little glitches that were sort of nobody's fault. It was technology. Again, I think technology is improving all the while, so there'll be fewer of those. But that editorial element was something I hadn't mentally factored in as part of the cost, and I sort of swallowed hard with groups. We've got to pay that as well. So do allow for, if you're making payments, that there will always be extra coming from editing, coming from
Chapter breaks.
yes, all sorts of things like that. It's not just the narration.
It should be wrapped up into per finished hour though. You shouldn't really have
it
someone
is.
coming to you after the fact to say, by the way, give me more for
Well, these
editing.
are young people
Yes.
starting out, and we were working together with them,
Yeah.
so
Okay.
exactly, too. It's just like,
If I can actually, because obviously, Rosie, you've raised ACX there.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yes.
which obviously, so that's the portal by which, if you want to get things on Audible, that's the main portal through which this happens. There are other places where you can go to get stuff. recorded and so on, but ACX is the main portal. And as you was describing there, you're talking about royalty share and royalty share plus, and talking about the finished hour. It's interesting to hear people talk about the finished hour, because there's an interesting thing there. I think that there's a mood amongst the narrating community that a lot of narrators undersell themselves, that they're offering their services for frankly not very much money. We use a couple of narrators. Matthew Lloyd Davis is one we use for a lot of our books. He's an amazing actor, he's brilliant. He charges $300 per finished hour, which is not crazy money. That's reasonable money within the industry. And so therefore we're paying that up front. But a lot of people, you just can't do that. Books not earning themselves out. If you're paying $300 per finished hour, that's quite a while before some books are going to start earning themselves out. So obviously ACX, I'm just thinking through the process here. If anyone else wants to step in here, you've got a book, you've gone and claimed it perhaps off your Amazon pile and say, I want to produce this book, or wherever it might be. And then you've got to go and find a narrator. So just on top of that, because we found our narrators another way. Matthew Lloyd Davis, basically we had a friend who had his audiobook recorded, it won an award, we went, who did your book? This guy. Right, great. Heidi got into stalking mode, stalked the guy, going, would you like to record some books? This was shortly before he became really popular, and so we kind of got him a decent rate. How, and I'll probably, obviously narrator, author, but so maybe it's a question particularly for Michael. How do you go and find a narrator? Or can anyone else suggest thoughts anyway? But Michael.
Right, yeah. So if you're going, ACX, just to be super clear, is the self-publishing wing of Audible. Basically the same way that KDP is the self-publishing arm of Amazon. So if you're going to go into ACX and you're going to claim your title and then you want to find a narrator, you can do two things. You can fill out the project, you can put in all the details that you think you want. So you can say, I need a female narrator, roughly this kind of age, in terms of the voice, and roughly if there's an accent requirement, you can list all that. You put it up for audition, and narrators that are interested in the project will be scrolling through, they'll find it, and they will record the sample, it's usually about 5 minutes or so, that you upload for them. And those auditions will come in, and then you can at your leisure just listen to them and pick your best one, and then chat to them and see if you want to work together. But you can also just go out and find books that you like, similar books in that genre space that you think have good narration. Just find, listen to them, and if you like a narrator, just Google it. Either you'll be able to find that narrator searching in the ACX directory, or if you just Google their name, and you'll probably find them somewhere. They'll have a web page maybe, some may be attached to an agency, they may have an agent, that's going to vary. And you can just contact them via email, like anyone else, and if you have the schedule, if the scheduling works and the budget works, they'll happily take. You don't have to necessarily go through the ACX system to find a narrator, because when you get the files delivered at the end of the day, you upload them to ACX. That's fine. The narrator doesn't have to be on the platform per se. So you can find it manually. You can go hunting and manually do that. You can just wait for the auditions to come in. You can do both. That's it takes a bit of effort, but that's how you want to find and you want to do that because the narrator is so important. If the narration doesn't marry up to your style and voice, it will fall over. That is, of course, if you're wanting to self-publish it. If you're worried about the budget and stuff, you could, if you've got the rights, you could try to send some pitches into the audiobook publishers, of which there are many, and see if you get. You can go fishing and see if you get any bites, because it won't cut. It won't hurt. You can. So you've got Podium, Tantor, Dreamscape. Is Recorded Books still a separate entity, or is that bought by some? Recorded Books, and do you know what, there's many, but those are kind of the big ones. It's Podium, Tantor, Dreamscape, Recorded Books, and there'll be more. And again, they will probably have even if it's just a generic contact section, if that's all you can find, just send in the email, with your kind of pitch, with some sales info, a bit about you. You never know. Someone will get back to you. The worst they'll say is no, and there's no skin off your back, but one might bite. Yeah. And then not only will they produce it, they used to be, the audio publishers are very good at convincing you that no, you don't need an advance for this book and stuff like this. As that competition has become a bit more fierce, they've started to accept that, okay, even if they don't want to, they're going to have to give a small one. So if someone does buy nowadays, you'll probably get, even if it's a small advance, you'll get a little bit of money, and they'll obviously take on all the burden of the cost. So that's, if you're worried about the cost, that's probably go fishing first, see if you can get them. That's great. You may lose control about the narration, of course, they will have the final say. Some will let you suggest people, but they have the final decision on the narrator, of course. But those are how you would find the narrator, I guess. I think. But,
Any other thoughts on either finding a narrator or indeed being found as a narrator?
I do know that because I have a friend who produces audiobooks and directs them, that people like Penguin are now developing a kind of stable of narrators, so that if you're lucky enough to be picked up by one of the big companies, nowadays they find one of their respective narrators. So again, things have moved on so that I think it's more streamlined now and more professional. One point I would make about anybody who's going to go to the self-publishing route is, as with printed books, you must have an editor, and that is perhaps an expense that you've got to allow for, unless you have somebody who will do it for you. You write to become an audiobook, so it's going into the writing process there. Taking a book that has been written for print and then turning it into an audiobook is another game, and it does need careful editing. I did a lot of editing my own novel to make it right for speech and for telling, for narration. So that basically means cutting out a lot of description, which on the printed book is needed, allowing more flow of dialogue, cutting out the he says, she says. It is a different art form. It's not just reading the book, which maybe, Books for the Blind was in the old days.
I would say that almost no publisher will ask you to do that.
No, but you may, if you're trying to do it yourself, as self-publishing.
Well, if you mean if you are recording it yourself, or if you are just self-funding the production?
Self-funding, yes.
I would still say that most narrators just say, "Give me the book as is." That I've worked with. They want.
That's the case. Yeah.
They do.
They will do it now, will they?
They'll do the whole. The he said, she said. They don't want the difference. They don't. They want to just do the whole thing just as it's written, which is good because that means a little less. But I have thought about that. I've talked to my narrator about that. I was like, would it be advantageous to adapt the script? And he said, no, just because there'll be sometimes stuff in the text that you've written it for a purpose, and if you start doctoring and altering it a bit too much, that might go. And I think I talked about this in a panel previously with you, and there was a bit of a contention. But I mean, the narrators you've got tight schedules, right? You're often doing. It's back to back a lot of the time. You've got these big books. You're in the booth for 8 hours a day.
Getting hot, sweaty.
In an ideal, in a sort of ideal world, you might adapt the book so it comes out a bit script-like, and you could have it flow better. But you're going through so much content that the guidance of he said this, she said that, etc. just helps without tripping you up, I guess. And to this thing, right? It's a little easier.
Yeah, I find in my case, it slips slightly less pronounced, let's say, he said. It's there, but it's not part of the full voice that you get in the dialogue or the description of action and whatnot. But it is there. I don't.
That may be because you knew the book so well, Pauline, because you'd know that you wouldn't have to say he said angrily, because it's angry, the book, So that might be part of it. And and thinking about all this, I can absolutely be sure why you've gotten the contract already, because it's going to take X amount of time, and then they can just print, when they're ready to print. But this will take a certain amount of build-up, and then it comes out at the same time, which I have seen books, the audio, the ebook.
Yeah.
I can release an ebook at the same time as release a print one because it's very similar. But there's infrastructure, there's work that's required for the audiobooks. If you want them to come out the same time.
Yeah.
You've got to start that process
It's-
definitely sooner.
I find it interesting because whilst I 100% agree with Michael and Rosa about the fact that actually narrators want the book as is, as a listener, proof listener of my own books, you know, I'm going to go with Bonnie here because I'm listening to all that. She said, she said, and oh, that clunky sentence, and obviously, you know, you find the flaws in your own book in an entirely new way when it's been read back to you, by which point it's way too late.
This
Right.
is true though, because some words flow when you read them, and others work better on the page.
I feel I have to confess a thing now. The latest book that our narrator is narrating is the 6th book in a crime series in which one of the characters, we just, because clearly we were bored, described him as having an accent that's half Welsh, half American.
That's gone, right out.
It was a lad from the valleys who spent too long in Silicon Valley. And I've had so many emails. It's going, right, what does this sound like? What does it sound like? And I'm sending him YouTube videos of Tom Jones talking. You know, you can't just have a character who sounds like Tom Jones. And so I go on Facebook and find people who are born in Wales and live in Wales. And eventually go, do you know what? I'm just going to change that one sentence. and just do it. Just do it. I literally, otherwise I never would do, but we change that one sentence, play it Welsh, and that's it. You know, as simple as that, because, you know, otherwise he was going to strangle himself trying to do, you know, Californian with it like boyo on the end in some really kind of cod Welsh way. Other questions from the audience? Yes, please.
Yeah, you're all professionals in your own right, and you started somewhere. If you have a small work, and you're used to audio recording for games, apps, and things like that, which my wife is, and she's got diction as good as yours, is there a program that you can apply to ACX with your own work, with your own editing, and basically upload it as a trial, I'm saying?
So are you asking that if you do voice work, but you want to get into narration?
Your own work even.
Right, okay.
Because her own work is quite different. Her voice acting is, in my mind, good. I'm obviously biased, but it's good. And her work is different, so it will have an audience. Is there an audio program we can look at to use, rather than the little bit she uses now and sends it off to America to be cut into a game somewhere? Is there something we can use for that 25 minutes to an hour's work that needs to be recorded? And I keep looking at you, Michael, sorry. Not trying to take your work away from you, because obviously you're a professional in your own right.
No, so I'm just trying to understand the question. So
The
are you
question
asking?
is there a small DIY recording studio that you could take a voice like Pauline's, take a work like my wife's, stick it together and do your own job and then upload it to ACX? Or have I not quite got the idea right?
So you can, if you have ACX will take any files you upload, they don't care. So if you record it at home, with your own equipment, that works perfectly fine. Yeah. I assume that's what you would be doing.
She's got her own good mic,
yeah.
pop filters, so I've built her a screen behind it.
Yeah, so she can record whatever it is, right?
Yes.
So if you want to record the book at home, you can just upload that straight to ACX. So she would claim the book on ACX. Yes. Has to be published on Amazon first. You can't just do audio just on its own. Yep, so that's fine. So you claim the book, and then you say, yep, I'm the narrator. Just put your name in, and then you get to the file upload and just upload it. Like this,
an audio file upload.
Yes.
That you can adjust as she does with different tone or whatever.
Well, yeah. So you upload the audio files each chapter is its own file.
Yes.
You do like opening credits, any kind of introduction. Each chapter is its own file. ACX has extensive, how-to FAQs on this in terms of the file type, etc., the sound. They've got all the stuff that you will need to meet to pass their quality control. Right. So that's all there. So as long as you can do all that mastering and QA on your site and upload ready files, that's super smooth. It just goes straight through.
I would just add they have standards. It's not a case that anybody can send any rubbish up. You have obviously the experience and so unlikely to have problems. but somebody who has never done a recording before, sending it up the ACX route, they're likely to be asked to improve the files,
Yes.
moderate the quality of the tone,
Yeah. Background noises,
background
like
noises,
bands.
etc.
Oh, yeah.
So it's not a free-for-all. It is a good standard,
Yeah.
and I think you can be proud if something gets onto ACX. It's not a case of vanity publishing at all.
No.
All the guidelines are there, so it's very clear what all the measures you'll have to hit. So
Excellent. When we've had enough of that, we'll come to you.
I think it's worth, I certainly from our perspective, think about the notion that actually the analogy between KDP for publishing to Kindle and ACX for publishing to Audible is a very good analogy. Any one of us can put a Word document together and get a piece of artwork and put a book on Amazon. But obviously someone has to buy it and like it, and more people need to buy it. And I think selling material via Audible is the same struggle as selling material in ordinary book form. So ultimately, you know, there are obviously the technical barriers, there's the performance barriers, but there is again the economic marketing barrier if you want it to be successful. And I think one of the interesting things, harking back to that, to an earlier question, is obviously you've got effectively the books exist in one place, the Audible, whilst linked, will exist in another, and again, getting an audience to buy those, to be interested in those, is I think as big a challenge as anything else. And I think obviously it becomes an increasingly crowded marketplace. It is enormously popular, but you know that's part of the challenge as well. So there's the technical dimension, but there's also actually getting people to find it, people to see it. So yes, did that answer your question, by the way?
Yes,
Lovely.
very good, yeah.
Other questions from the audience? Yes, please.
Following on from a discussion we had in the editors panel, sort of what threat does, I'm going to say the word, what threat does AI pose to narration and audiobook with the rise of AI narrators and that sort of thing? Sort of what?
I think we're all going to have an opinion on that, so I'm going to start at that end and work our way up.
I'm very worried about it, possibly because I don't know enough about it. You know, I'm not a scientist, I'm not a computer geek, but I do try to keep abreast of trends. I would much prefer to see some control over our AI rather than it just happening. And things that just happen are uncontrolled and sometimes go very badly wrong. I don't want to be squeezed out as a writer by an AI, basically.
I'll pass this along because you know, I'm not a narrator, and that sounds like it's much more impacting on you guys, the questions.
So far, what I've heard from AI narration is it's very obvious. They don't have the nuance, the flow, the acting part, or anything like that. It is fairly obvious what they are.
It's like the elevator pitch.
Floor one. I've had companies come to me to ask me to speak lists of words, and obviously I know what that's about.
Yes.
No, thank you. I fear that they will get better. I mean, you hear about these deep fakes of videos and such. So how good will it become? And that will be sad. And obviously artists are feeling that same pinch.
Well, that's what the writer's strike is about, and the artist's strike. That's what all the actors are all on strike. They're like, you're not using my voice and my image.
At the moment, I think we're okay, but they've got to this point, and they're only going to try and improve, aren't they?
Who's seen The Mandalorian?
Yes.
Okay, have you seen the bit where Luke Skywalker turns up in The Mandalorian?
Looks
Then it wasn't the Mark.
where it looks like he's cut out of
Ah,
cardboard.
Yeah, yeah.
yes.
Well, it's digitally done, and then the voice is completely AI. They didn't get Mark Hamill to record. They just took, you know, the AI voiced the whole thing. So when you first hear it, you think it's him, but then as it goes on, you just realise it's just there's no movement in the voice at all. You know, when the little baby Yoda falls over, he goes like, "Get back up, come on, get," and there's nothing to it. But it can fool you for a time, and it's so eerie.
But it
So,
can't,
it-
certainly can't fool you for many sentences.
No, it gets away
Certainly
for a
not
bit,
whole
but
book
after a
then.
while you're like, yes, I
Oh,
think,
Lord,
you know,
no.
yeah. So it's
Yeah.
that's what I mean. It's not there yet, as you know, it might come. But hopefully there's they can just be protections for you guys, right? Like if someone just nabs your voice, then you can get that hopefully
Yeah.
flagged somehow, and as long as you don't foolishly give your voice to a company that wants you to record
No,
bits and
no.
pieces, you know that.
It will come, because technology will go on, and it will come, they will get better at it.
I mean, that's what they did to Martin Lewis, didn't they? They had him pretending to sell something, and he's the money guy. But they had him record it.
Yes,
He
yes.
does commercials, he has a radio, I don't know, I don't follow. But he has voices, his words are out there at large
That's right.
already. And they took it down, and it was him selling something, like Bitcoin, I think.
That's
He
right.
was scandalized. He's like, no, I would never have anyone sell that. And he says, hopefully they'll know it's not me, but it is out there. And so that is kind of a problem. I haven't done anything with it, but I will pitch it again. I did get this idea, and I bought a website called humanmade.co.uk, and my time is coming. And I will have books written by humans. I will have illustrations made by humans. And in fact, by the time I finally did, I talked to someone. It was 2017, and by the time I got home, humanmade.com was gone. I went, shit. And so I went humanmade.org, no, and then humanmade.co.uk, and I had to put a hyphen in there. So people are going, do you know? And this is 2017. And so I purchased it then. And every now and then, want to sell it? I'm like, no. And so it's going to be made by humans, drawn by humans, written by humans, and I'll know them, I'll talk to them on the phone, I'll meet them at a panel somewhere, and no one's going to say, I have a book. You know, I'm not going to get full, you know, or, you know, two kids on a, you know, standing on each other's shoulder. And so, but they're human, so I'd be okay with that. So that's what I'm doing. I've made that small inroad, and there's got to be 4 other people that's done it, because it took me a while to get the permutation that I was happy to settle with. So there's going to be people out there going, I want stuff made by humans, because the end result is like, it's going to be one computer pushing a button for the other computers. Humans need jobs. We actually need to exist. And so I think there will be a fight back for that. And I think you'll find people wanting to get stuff made by us. You know.
The revolution starts here, apparently. I mean, I'm going to be with this gentleman here, who I don't know personally. That I would argue that there are things that are effectively inevitable. You know, if you try and go and visit a travel agent on the high street or an insurance agent on the high street, they've been replaced. They've become electronic things. AI narration isn't up to scratch now, but it will be. It's coming. It's happening. It's the issue with AI art. It's AI editing. You could be reading books right now that are written by AI, and you go, that's a bit ropey. But you wouldn't know.
Well, you would. Apparently there's a book on mushroom gathering.
Indeed.
Which very dangerous, apparently.
AI loves to lie to fill the gaps. But I do think it's a genuine consideration, because again, looking at forums, looking at groups, people will go, oh, you see on writers groups, self-published groups, people go, oh, I'm thinking going down the AI narration route, and if you join narrators groups online, it's kind of, bloody hell, you know, we've got to fight against AI narration. It's a thing that people can consider, and it's going to be cheaper than humans. I think this thing is that, you know, there'll always be human creatives. I mean, that's it says, I hope so. There'll always be human creatives. People will want that, but if something becomes cheaper that's machine produced, people will go that way. And I think there are people who, if they said, if your audiobooks can be half the price, will you consider this slightly ropey voice? People probably would do. And I think there is an element, and I'm sorry if I've gone all dystopian now, but I think there is an element where actually the industry in many different areas is about adaptation rather than fighting back. Because I should imagine some of this stuff is just going to occur. Someone please disagree with me.
Well, because the climate is changing, and there's been, I don't know if it's been 12 or 10 floods, 10 major floods in 12 days. And when water hits electrical things, it doesn't go very well. And so with the future that's coming is going to possibly take away some of our electronic gadgetry and worldwide webbishness, and we'll get back to people sitting around a fire reading stuff. So I'm not too concerned about it.
That's gone
Hang on.
I know, I'm mad at it,
It's
you know.
all fine because society's going to collapse. Just check
No,
those
the
on
collapse would get smaller, and I think some of the things are going to shrink. I think people are going to fight back and not want to be replaced by the Terminator.
I see a parallel with the William Morris movement and the extreme industrialization, cheap industrialization of the 19th century that meant people could have machine-made vases and sofas and all the
Oh, yeah,
rest
the
of it,
redware.
stuff their houses with them. And you had this kickback whereby people said, we want to buy something that is handmade, but it was more expensive. And this is likely to be, I think, what will happen, that you will have a premium on an audiobook being actually humanly narrated, just as you'll have a premium on beautiful books because people want to handle beautiful books, smell them even, as opposed to reading on the screen or just listening to them. But the era of us all being able to earn a living out of beautiful things is probably, that's utopian rather than dystopian.
Yeah.
The fear there would be though that it would become an elitist thing.
Yeah,
Only
absolutely.
for those who can afford it.
Absolutely.
And then you end up with underground things, people doing other stuff. I mean, you will.
I like the idea of
Find a
underground
way,
narration.
yes.
Yeah.
No, but I mean books and things. You know,
Want some narration.
Once upon a time.
Just feed me and water me and I'll narrate.
There you go.
Lovely. Other questions? Anything? Yes, hello.
That's you, Rosa. You said you could pay money up front, but then you still get 50-50. So what's the benefit of paying money up front?
It's a much, much smaller amount of money up front.
But
So
can't you
it's-
just do 50-50 in any case?
It's 50-50 the profits.
Right.
Because we had an author wanting to do this, and there's a group of actors down, and they are getting paid. We do 50-50 with the publisher, but we do have to get our expenses before the 50-50. We'll profit share.
Right.
Yeah.
And so it's almost
So
like the
I
film
think
contract some actors will do. You'll get some of the profits. Oh, sure, there'll never be any profits if you do it right. But that's not what we do, and our things are transparent. And so the acting troupe will be transparent, but they're going to say, I got to hire an actor. They get this. We're going to do that. We're going to have lunch. We're going to do these things. We have to hire the hall. So there's expenses, and so down the road you might get it. You know, here's like 50p. But you know, I'm saying you can do it that way. But if you're paying up front, then they can do some of the things, and then you'll get there faster.
Yeah. the
We
profit
don't
cuts
tend to
in.
do that model, but
Yeah,
you know,
profit cuts in earlier if you do
yeah,
that.
there's expenses
Yeah.
paid by someone somewhere,
Yeah.
and so those have to be met, or the production company goes out of business, and then you can't ask that group of actors to help you. So there's some things that
That's another thing.
infrastructure,
Another
yeah,
thing, no.
yeah.
Okay, thank you. Another question. Yes, we've got two questions, so we're going to get both of these in, and unlike some other panels, we're going to finish on time. You
Yeah.
please, sir.
Rebel you.
Yeah, there's been a lot of talk about narrating for novels. Is there much in the way of narration for short fiction and magazines, even just like little short stories that are in the just the publication for this event? That's as like an entry point. Is that something that exists in the market, or
Does, and I do it. I narrate match day programs for football teams.
Oh, yes, you were
saying,
right,
Yeah.
yes.
And I've also narrated 2 novellas, and I'm being approached to narrate stories from an anthology. So it's a short story.
And where do those ones, are they then going to be
That's-
packaged
I can't talk more
together?
about
Okay.
that.
Yeah,
than
no,
those.
yeah.
But in terms
Sorry.
of format, would they be packaged together as something that's a larger length and you're just recording a part of it?
In the case of the programme, for the match days,
So
yes.
like if you're doing a story?
And the anthologies, yes.
Yeah, so it
But the
becomes part of the
novellas
larger
are
work.
one-offs, they're
Yeah.
just, just short, yeah, they're up on Audible.
I think personally, as both a person who sells books through Audible and is a consumer of Audible, obviously with Audible I get my credits every month to spend, and there's a tiny bit in my brain that when I spend my credit, it doesn't matter how big the book is, it's 1 credit. And therefore I'm kind of going, right, there's a 10-hour book, there's a
Yes.
2-hour book.
Yes.
I never go for 20-hour books, I just have I kind of look at personal investment. But if there is a thing, then there is an issue there, I think, within a consumer perspective, that people do want longer form because depending upon how they're subscribing to their thing, that therefore they want
Then they
to
might
get.
buy that for 99p, you know.
Yes, I know.
So you have that. I would never use my credit on, you know, that, but yes, exactly.
You say your credit goes, so like six
Yeah,
hours and above.
16-hour, you know, Stephen King thing, and if I really want this other item, I'll buy it for, you know, £1.99, and I'm happy to do that. And as far as voices, I will listen to the sample if I'm like, dude, I just can't get on with you for the next 16 hours. Really, the voice actor is important. If I just like, it grates on my nerves, I just think, no. So it really is important, and that's what the sample is for. So,
Any other thing? Anything else about short form anyone wants to add? No, we're good. Right. Okay. Thank you. Final question then, please.
I was going to ask Michael mainly about like the costs for like funding like self-published audio.
Yeah.
Like what more details? Like I guess it's studio narrator, anything else?
It
or-
depends. So some narrators will do it all themselves, do all the editing, mastering, etc., or they will have some that they sub it out to. So if a narrator, if they say, hey, it's $200, $300 per finished hour, that's usually a total cost. Unless the narrator says, this is my fee, but I want to use a studio. Some narrators much prefer to use a studio. The benefits for that are really just that they get to sit in the booth. It's all set up for them. There's a sound engineer out just outside the room. So if they stumble and make a mistake, the sound engineer will catch that, clip it, and the narrator can come right back in. It's very smooth, and they don't have to worry about all that kind of extra faff around it. And I've noticed, so like with my current series, the first book was recorded during COVID, and the narrator did it at home. And then the next two were done in studios. And there is a noticeable difference just in the quality of the files. It's not hugely noticeable, but it's a little bit there. And just his performance was just a bit. It felt like he was just getting into it more in the sequels because he's not having to worry about all this extra stuff. But that's up to the narrator and their preference. Typically, though, it works out similar. It can be a little more expensive when you're paying the narrator a fee and then the studio a fee, but not massively so. It will depend on what the narrator's fee is, of course. A kind of benchmark I used to use was, in total, whether it's the narrator doing it all or narrator plus a studio, would be around $300 per finished hour was a sort of a good benchmark to get like a really nice professional thing. That might have gone up a bit now because everything's going up a little bit now, but you can certainly find narrators who are just starting out that won't be charging so much. It's one of those things where you can pay as much as you want, and if you want to try and come down a little bit, you just have to hunt around a little bit more. It might be that some of the writers that you really love and books that you really love obviously might be a little higher up. Just got the price around, but $300 per finished hour is a good one to keep in your head, just as rough estimates. But you can certainly get it a little cheaper if you go hunting.
Thanks.
And for most writers going to like ACX, all of those little bits of the cost, they're all over there because you're paying for basically a production service. So you're going to a narrator who is using their own production services, their own production team and editor. And I think in terms of that, you tend to talk about 10,000 words of a novel or book or whatever, it's about an hour. So then if you take that $300 per finished hour, a 90,000, 100,000 word novel, you're talking $2,500 to $3,000 is probably that's the kind of cost. I think we are pretty much out of time. Can I invite the audience to join me in thanking our panel? And do come bother them then.